Welcome to another edition of Hacker Heroes, a segment where we explore the stories behind the hackers in our community. Dive into the intricate world of cybersecurity with our featured guest, Mark Loveless, widely known by his handle SimpleNomad. With a rich history in the realm of information security and hacking, Mark is a seasoned professional researcher and thought leader. Stay tuned. My conversation with SimpleNomad coming up next. This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network. From the Security Weekly Vault, it's the show where exploits run wild, packets aren't the only things being sniffed, and the cocktails flow steady. It's Paul's Security Weekly. And we are here with Mark Loveless, a.k.a. SimpleNomad. Mark, welcome to Hacker Heroes.
Hey, good to be here, Paul.
Dude, it's nice to see you. Nice to have you on the show today. Before we get into it, though, I found this old crusty website. I almost don't want to say which website it is because then someone may realize that that site's still running and shut it down. And I haven't mirrored it yet. So there is an entry for SimpleNomad. And I wanted to verify a couple of things, Mark. It says facts. Predicted DDoS attacks before they were a publicly known phenomenon.
Yeah, that was I did. I wasn't the only one, just so you know. I wasn't the only one that was, but there was a few of us that said this is going to become a thing, and then it did.
And now it's certainly still a thing. It says is a skilled lockpicker.
Yeah, I'm a decent lockpicker. Yeah,
is into Wicca.
Yes.
So we're 3 for 3 on facts. We're actually facts on this website. I'm impressed. Now it says rumors. Brace yourself. Spends his spare time reverse engineering UFOs.
I can't neither confirm nor deny. So
wears a tinfoil hat when no one is looking.
Oh, now you've just ruined everything.
I just, it's a fun. I'll send it to you afterwards.
Yeah, but I do it shiny side in.
That's right. So it radiates from the inside. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Mark, how did you get? What was your first introduction to technology?
Probably through my dad. He was into computers, pretty big time. That was his job. He was one of the very first programmers on the Sabre system, the reservation system that American Airlines owned at the time.
That was like a mainframe big, right?
Yeah.
That was old.
Yeah, very old. And so he was into that, and then eventually, of course, he wanted me to be into computers, and I was convinced, I'm going to be a rock star.
You're going to be a rock star. Do you still play music?
Oh yeah, still play music. But I was just, I just thought, well, he's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's too old to know what I know.
Right.
That kind of attitude, right? So, but I liked, the very first video games and stuff. I liked those, and then all of a sudden he brought home an Apple II, not a 2 Plus, not a 2E, an Apple II.
I had an Apple IIe. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. There you go. And so I kind of really took to that, and then things kind of went from there. Because I remember at the time it came with a hard copy printout of the firmware, and a book called AppleSoft Basic, and then and with I think a couple of cassette tapes, because that's how you loaded the programs in.
Right.
The
2E was floppy disk. Yes.
Yeah, this was before the floppy disk, and so you had to load that stuff in, and it was crazy. He got more into it, and he ended up buying a whole bunch of different. He'd upgraded the new version of whatever, and so I would get the old stuff, and he would just let me use it however I wanted to.
Which is
The
awesome, right? Like, and I think many of us do that now. As we get new technology, we give the old, older technology to the kids, and just let
That's what
have
I
at
did.
it. Like, if you blow it up, we'll rebuild it. Like, whatever, right?
Exactly, and that's kind of the way I went with it. Was just I just like went after it. The thing that was interesting is that I remember eventually at some point there were two things that happened. The thing that got me into hacking,
Mm,
uh, which I didn't even have any idea what that was, because it wasn't a thing really, as from my perspective, uh,
true.
as a teenager, was that um, there was a group of them at where he worked at American that did not want to pay a huge amount of money for software.
Mm,
And so by the time things were coming out on floppy disk, what they would do is they would buy a whole bunch of blank floppy disks. One of them would buy the program. Now they pool their money,
mm-hmm.
okay? And then they would get it, and then they would, you know, make copies of the software for everyone onto floppy disk. And my role ended up being is that they were trying to figure out how to get around copy protection
Mm-hmm.
that was happening at the time. And so I started. I turns out I had a knack for it. So for his little wares group that he had
You were the code.
you
You're the
know,
code breaker.
yeah, I was the one using the nibble editor.
Mm.
I used there's one called, I think, Locksmith was a I think that was the name of the program.
Basically, making
But
changes to the binaries to get around the copy protection, right?
it depended. Yeah,
Yeah.
usually it was something on the they would do weird things like put the first do something in the first sector of the floppy disk and
Mm-hmm.
some weird thing on there. And but anyway, it was just that was the thing, just to get around that. And that kind of got me into it. And then the other part that got me into it was that my dad, well, there was a shared account that all the programmers um, that worked on the Sabre system, they had a shared TimeNet account and a
Mm-hmm.
Telenet account. And so using X25, they would have a modem and then dial up into one of these TimeNet or Telenet nodes, and then once they got logged in, they would type in AA, which would take them to American Airlines. And one day I was playing around with that, and I discovered that, hey, I can type in something besides AA and go someplace else.
And did,
Like I type in IBM and hit
right.
enter, and then I go to go to
I've heard
someplace interesting,
I've heard
you
others
know?
describe this, right? Because this is pretty. I mean, the internet. These weren't connected. There was no internet, right?
No,
It was
no
just
internet.
these were just another set of connected systems, separate
Yeah,
from like they've had built the internet at this point, but it hadn't become the thing it is today, obviously, right? But there are other sets of connected systems, in other words.
yeah, yeah. So if you're out there listening and wondering what the hell I'm talking about, just Google X.25 networks, and you'll find out information on that. And I had up until the mid 2000s, I had an account on an X.25 node
Wow, that's
that I'd
crazy. Yeah,
maintained that I'd maintained for quite a while. Uh, but yeah, I mean, just they were even being used, well, right up until probably that node was turned off, and that was like I don't know, 2007.
mm,
I would check it about once a year just to see if it was still there out of curiosity.
the things
And
we
of
do
course
out of curiosity.
yeah.
That's
And it was, but it was just, it eventually went away.
that's man. But you would connect to that from your home computer.
I would hop through something else. I wasn't
Oh,
gonna.
I see. So you're trying to be stealthy
What?
about it.
when I was later on. I
Yeah.
mean, back then, just like because you could you start typing in just random letters just to see where it would take you, as opposed to AA or IBM or TRW or you know whoever.
I
And it,
yeah, it's like the beginnings of hacking, right? Like in its
hmm
kind of
yeah,
truest sense. I feel like in some it's different now. I don't want to say it's lost because I don't think it's lost, but it's very different today because there's all kinds of laws and people want to arrest you and things like that. Back in the day, it was exploration in the time period you're talking about, right?
yeah. And later on, as things evolved, uh, and you start actually realizing, okay, well, this is probably not what I should be doing. I shouldn't be looking up, you know.
Yeah, you knew you shouldn't be there, but you're still curious, right?
Yeah, I'm so curious. And so, yeah, and so you start kind of really looking around and digging. But the thing is, it's just like back then, if you wanted to know something about uh, Unix, then that's how you got access.
Yeah, you couldn't just now you could go to a web page and get a simulator and mess around with a Raspberry Pi and virtualization.
Exactly.
Back then, you had to go
Yeah.
find a system.
Yeah, you had to go find a system and then you had to gain access to it. And then
Back then,
you'd use,
everyone was hackers, man.
yeah, I mean,
Basically, I really actually it's true.
no, it really was.
Mm.
And that was, and I just remember there were obviously there were people that were better at it than others. And I was decent. And I also tried to be nice when I was in some system I knew I wasn't supposed to be in. Just
Mm-hmm.
like I got in with this particular vulnerability or this particular misconfiguration. I'll go ahead and fix this
Right.
while I'm at it. I'll leave it. I'm going to leave it in a better place
Then I found it.
when
Yeah.
than I found it. I mean, it's just kind of like when you go to the park, you're walking the dog, and you see, okay, well, I've got the bag here with the dog shit in it. I'm going to go ahead and pick up some of this trash that's lying around
Right.
as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Leave the place a little bit nicer than when you arrived. Doesn't take much effort, and that's the way that I kind of approached things back then.
And then did you were you talking with other like hackers and other hacker groups at that time?
Yeah. A lot of bulletin boards.
Mm-hmm.
I probably connected up to nearly every single what ended up being every Cult of the Dead Cow members
Mm-hmm.
BBS that they ran.
Mm.
So I'm positive I was on uh, Beto O'Rourke's BBS that he had up. I'm sure I was
And
because
what was Beto O'Rourke? He one of the founders of CDC.
Yeah, he was one of the original members. I don't know if he would be classified as a founder, but
Mm.
he was one of the original crew and left shortly after because he had to go to college and become a bigwig politician and all that. But
Oh, right, that was the politician in Texas. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, because I was all over that region,
Right.
which that was my region, southwestern Bell.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah, so you
that,
must have done
that,
some phone system hacking too, right? Because
oh yeah, yeah,
we
yeah,
didn't want to
yeah,
necessarily
big
pay the
time.
phone bill back then either, which is the
No, I
thing.
didn't
Yeah.
want. Yeah, well, and so that's interesting because I remember one time I was on. This was early on. I was on vacation. This is pre all the computer stuff. It was pre getting the Apple computer. But I
Mm.
remember I was on a family trip. We were in because I grew up in Oklahoma,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd gone out to California, big family trip, and we're hanging around the Bay Area doing all this stuff. And they had to make a pit stop for my younger siblings, and I had saved up my money for the trip, but I hadn't spent it on anything, so I had my cash with me. And there was these hippies in this car next to me that were doing this weird transaction,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm
With
I'm
on a
overhearing.
payphone, right?
No, they weren't. No, this was like out of the
Mm.
trunk of the car, and
Oh,
they're
okay.
they're just
Yeah.
they're discussing this stuff, and it sounded interesting to me because it was just like they said, yeah, basically they said you take this device and then it'll play a tone and uh, it'll emulate coins in a payphone. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool.
What?
So you don't have to pay long distance, or yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and then they had a couple of, they had two or three devices
Mm.
uh, that they were different, that did different things, and they were arguing with the guy, I and one of them was like really stoned.
Wait, was it hallucinogenics, or you think just marijuana, or both, or?
No, it was. I did find out it was hallucinogenics. So I
Okay.
go up and I say, "Hey, I want one of these."
Yeah.
And so they said, "Okay, well, do you know what to do with it?" And I said, "Well, I'll figure it out."
Sure.
And the guy was like, "I like your spirit," and all this,
Mm-hmm.
and and then the other guy was just kind of like, "Oh, oh," and
Oh,
he's
look at
like,
the colors, man.
yeah, he's like freaking out, and he said, "Don't mind him. He just took some acid." And it's like, okay, that's cool.
Wait, how old
Now
were you
here,
how old were you at the time?
oh geez, I don't know. I don't know, 16
16. Okay.
maybe. I can't remember exactly. But the thing was, this is the funny thing. Both of them were named Steve. And they later went on to form this computer
company
company.
company called little company called Apple. you know.
Yeah.
So
So, and I actually,
for the audience, the guy that was high on LSD, right, or acid was Steve Jobs.
of course.
Because I can picture him in the movie Silicon Valley. That's how I
Mhm.
picture the scene. Is like directly out of the movie Silicon Valley, which Anthony Michael Hall was Bill Gates, and I forget who played Steve Jobs. But anyway, the other guy was Steve Wozniak, and so you bought a blue box from Jobs and Wozniak
Yeah.
in whatever year that was. You're dating. You look
Well,
great. You
yeah,
look great
because
for 37, Mark. By the way.
yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Uh, but
Yeah.
now, how much was the blue box? And this was probably 1978, 9 ish.
Uh, a little before then.
Mm.
But I cannot remember how much it was. It seemed like a fortune at the time.
Yeah,
It probably was around, I don't know,
50.
all told, because $40-50
Yeah,
around there.
which is a lot back then.
Uh,
Yeah.
a whole lot back
Hmm.
then. Just remember, just for perspective, you could buy a pack of cigarettes for like 30 cents.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, this was a small fortune, and it was all the money I had that I'd saved up. I brought it, and I hadn't told my parents.
Of course not. Not that they
No,
would have
because
known
I
what it
was.
was, but so now you get this blue box, and then how'd you figure out how to use it?
He Woz basically gave me a quick instruction on how
Sure.
to use it.
Gotcha.
So that was it. And there, like I said, there was a couple other electronic devices. I can't even remember what they were.
Mm.
I wish I still had them. I don't know what happened to them because
Right. I know.
they'd be worth a fortune now.
Yes. Yes.
You know.
I don't know how you'd validate that, but I think he marked the blue boxes that he sold, though. I read something about that. Like he marked like serial number. It was something on the inside that he marked.
Oh, maybe he did. Maybe he did. I don't know.
And so your first call was to the Pope, or no, that was Woz, or is
I
that a
no,
rumor?
I just no. Yeah, I think that was supposed to be. I think that was supposedly. Yeah, it may have been him. I don't know. I was thinking maybe it's Captain Crunch.
Maybe the details are kind of foggy from back then.
Yeah,
Well, I mean,
I
again, there was acid readily available, so
yeah, yeah. So
that's
no, but it
that's
was.
amazing though.
Yeah, and it was cool because, and that was the thing. It's just like I remember, I even because in the early days, if you had a question about this technology, you would call up Apple,
Mm-hmm.
and in the very early days of Apple, you stand a good chance of ending up with a Steve on the phone.
All right.
And I remember on one of those calls, which
You made with your blue
I
box.
I think I did make it with the blue box, and although I was so paranoid I didn't say it, but I did mention to him. I said we met before.
Mm.
I bought some electronics from you, and he was just like, "Oh man," because I don't have any recollection of that whatsoever.
So he doesn't remember you, which is unfortunate.
No, but the thing is, he was cool about everything.
Mm.
He was really cool about stuff. And the one other tech person that I spoke to back then, I did speak to Bill Gates uh, because I called up Microsoft,
Mm-hmm.
and a product that they had was called it was called Task, TASC,
Mm-hmm.
which is an acronym stood for the AppleSoft Compiler. And so it would take AppleSoft Basic and
Mm-hmm.
then compile it into native 6502
Mm-hmm.
machine code and everything. And so, you can write something in AppleSoft Basic and it just like now it's flying because it's running 3 times as fast
Right.
because
Right.
it's not going through an interpreter. And that was interesting. I had some technical question and they passed me to a couple of people, but he was the one that had wrote the program.
Wow.
And I ended up talking to him, and I remembered him specifically uh, because he was yelling at me because I was saying what I was doing, and he was just saying, "What? Oh my God, that's stupid! You're an idiot! Why are you doing things like that?" And he just like, "You got to do it like this," and you're just like, I'm just like, I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm
I'm a
practically a
hacker.
kid.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on. I'm just,
We don't know the
trying to
right
make
way
my
to
little
do things.
program
We
to work.
just we try shit and see what happens.
Yeah. No, but it was, the rock stars for me back then were the people that wrote Zork and,
Yeah.
the adventure games and stuff like that. That
Oregon
was,
Trail. Did you play Oregon Trail?
didn't play Oregon Trail. Uh, no, but I played the Zork and, I just found that fascinating.
There's the
So,
story of the software company behind Oregon Trail is really interesting. I'll send you. Have you read Hackers, Heroes of the Computer Revolution, Steve Levy?
yes, I have.
Yeah,
Been
that
a while.
I think that there's a chapter in there that talks about the crazy things that happened back in the day. They were developing for Apple, games for the Apple platform.
Yeah. That was the thing. That's that whole period then, that's where the term my understanding, from my perspective, that's where the term zero day came from because
Interesting.
a 0 day was the idea was when a new uh, program came out, new game typically, uh, the idea was to get a hold of it and be the first one to have the pirated copy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And so they had like 1 days and 2 days because I I got it, and on the day of release, I had a hack for it up on the bulletin board. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm cool. I had a 1 day. A 0 day meant that you had to basically break into the company that was doing the manufacturing.
Right, which happened a lot back then.
He was having a lot back then, and
Mm-hmm.
you break into that company and you get a copy of it. Particularly if you can get a copy of it before they'd added the copy protection.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times that was put on as a part of
Afterwards,
the yeah, as a part of the disk reproduction process. And
right?
so uh so you get a copy of that and then you upload that, and that was considered a 0 day
It's
because
crazy
it
to
had
think
been
that that's how it
it,
worked back in the day, right? Where now you can go
yeah,
on your Xbox and subscribe. You pay your monthly fee and you get access to a whole bunch of games.
yeah. But back then, I mean, the games were,
Hot
it
commodity, yeah.
seems like they were expensive, uh
Right.
all like they've always been.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a big thing then was that's where yeah, that's where I very first heard the term 0 day.
Mm. You would go on to create NMRC. What is
Hmm.
NMRC?
NMRC was a hacker group The name came up because I had back then on all those bulletin boards, I was using it. I had a different alias on every bulletin board because I just yeah, some of them there were some stuff that would happen on some of these that was so it was just like this is so questionable. These guys are going to get arrested. So I'm not going to have my name on multiple systems where
Right.
they say, "Ah, this is the guy that's, all over the place."
Because then
I
they'd pin you as the master. Back then, you'd be the master kingpin behind all the boards, and they want to
well,
prosecute you.
I just that or it would just draw attention. It says, "Okay, we found these 10 common names on
Yeah.
these 30 systems, that we busted. So we're going to we're going to keep an eye on what they do, because
Mm-hmm.
they're apparently thick with thieves all the time."
Right. Right.
So I use a different handle on every system. The first time I used SimpleNomad was on Will Spencer's BBS in Colorado, Hackers Haven,
Mm-hmm.
Hacker Haven,
Hacker
Hackers
Haven.
Haven,
That rings a bell. Yeah.
Hacker Haven. Yeah, that was the first time I used the name Simple Nomad was on that system, and then at that point I kept using that, and then I was having to fill out. I wasn't having to fill out, but it was the configuration information for using a newsreader,
Mm-hmm.
and it had, you put in your name, and then you put in your organization,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought, oh, I should have an organization. So I typed in Nomad Mobile Research Center. I gave it as much thought as it took for me to just say it.
Right.
All right. I thought, oh, this will sound cool. You know,
It does sound cool. I'll give you that. It does sound cool.
Yeah, and so I did that, and so that's where that came from. And then, yeah, and then I eventually I registered nmrc.org, and by the time I'd registered that, I already had two or three friends that we were kind of doing a thing together,
Sure.
and
In a
so we
thing is
just
like what we would call security research today, perhaps, or finding vulnerability. What time frame is this? And like, were you working at the time or?
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This is in the '90s,
Mm-hmm.
so I had an actual regular job
Mm.
doing security stuff, and uh, a lot of admin. Well, okay, I take that back. A lot of times it was admin work and
Sure.
stuff like that. But then in the mid '90s, I went to work at a company where I was doing admin stuff, and I ended up always getting security stuff because I seemed to have a knack for it,
Yeah.
supposedly. But really, I was like I'd already broken into all the company computers and everything. It was cool. They had all this at the time. That place they had a bunch of AIX, and so it just like I'd never played with, AIX, and oh, this is going to be awesome.
We weren't really about asking for permission. We were just exploring.
No, but it was just, I get odd questions when I would say, okay, well, I probably as a part of my job, I legitimately need access to this,
Right. Right.
but then I'm giving them a whole bunch of detailed information on in my access request. I need access to these systems, and I need these five together because I know they're grouped together. And it's just like, how do you know all this stuff? About how they're
Right.
laid out and how we set all these things up. But
And
it's
then
just
so
like,
NMRC was you and a bunch of friends, and I mean it's kind of similar to the like Loft and similar groups where you're just doing cool stuff, finding
yeah,
vulnerabilities.
yeah, yeah, a lot. Yeah, a lot of it. We had some private chat stuff set up to where we would chat. We work on things together. We would bullshit about dumb stuff together. Just whatever. It didn't matter. You know.
When did it become like where you'd find a vulnerability and disclose it out to the world, or maybe to the vendor first, or maybe not?
Um, Probably around the same time frame. This is the mid '90s.
Mm.
there's probably some stuff on a mailing list somewhere, security, or or a Usenet news group archive of
Right.
me posting some security info. A lot of it was because the time I was collecting information on certain topics, uh, and just for my own, knowledge and whatnot. And since I had a lot of exposure at the time to Novell NetWare,
Mm-hmm.
and the employers that around that time that I was working for, I was managing and helping to secure them. I knew a lot about that, and I just went to town with that stuff because no one else was doing
That's how
Novell
I
NetWare.
found NMRC. Now that you say that, Mark, I
Yeah,
was taking your exploits and research and applying it to testing Novell networks in the early 2000s.
yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so I just would
Mm.
gather that information. I thought, well, I'll kind of maybe I'll specialize in that for a bit, and then just because I thought that would be a good thing because no one had done that, and then I ended up so I had the NetWare hack fac,
Mm.
and
Yeah, I think I remember reading all that. Now, at least
yeah,
my Novell admin at the time was actually pretty good. I actually think most Novell, I mean, they wanted to be secure and robust. Like it was an interesting kind of culture they built around that stuff.
yeah, it really was, it really was, but and a lot of the bugs, I mean, like some of the stuff I found, I mean, that's just like this led later on to uh, led me down some interesting areas. Just finding some really interesting bugs. The thing that was interesting, I could talk about this now because it's way past the
Mm.
statute of limitations. Which is
We hope.
either
Yes.
7 or 10 years, depending on your jurisdiction, I guess. Whatever.
Yeah, we're talking well over
Way,
10 years ago.
yeah, well over 10 years ago. Yeah, last century. Uh,
Right.
no, I remember that. It was not unusual for hackers to trade uh, purloined software, purloined source code uh, for 0 days and 0 days for source code.
Oh,
It became a
interesting. There was a whole
commodity.
market. I mean, we dubbed it wares, but what you're saying is it intermingled with like I've got this really cool exploit, and you're like, well, I got this really cool software that I've basically pirated, right, or bypassed the protections on, and you trade.
And you trade, yeah. And I managed to get a hold of some uh, Novell NetWare source code. So I'm looking at this C source code, and I'm seeing how some of this stuff was laid out. I had another person that I think worked at Novell that physically sent me something in the mail. I had a post office box set
Mm-hmm.
up, and I received this thing in the mail, and it said, "This is how we do our authentication over the wire," and
Wow.
didn't give details on like whether it was exploitable or not. Just said this is how
Mm-hmm.
the things are moving, and I verified the information. Figured out how to sniff and do
Mm-hmm.
all that stuff, and
Right. Right.
verified the information, and then figured out a way to break into that communication, uh, do kind of a man in the middle and everything,
I think I
and
remember
which I
reading
think
this research now that you describe it.
it it
Yeah.
it to me it was one of the better things that I did, and no one gave a shit about it. Uh,
No way, I did.
but
I read some of this early stuff because,
well, you
like I
know
said,
what
I worked at the university and we had Novell and we were implementing Windows, and I was the security person right at the university, and we were bringing back a lot of memories. I read all that stuff back in the day.
yeah,
Yeah.
but it was an interesting little thing to do. But that's when I ended up getting the attention of the NSA
Mm-hmm.
because they brought it up and just said, "You've got a knack for this kind of stuff."
Wait, attention in a good way.
Yeah, in a good way. They
Oh,
said, "You
gotcha.
should come work for us. You should come work for us. We've had our eye on you for a while. Blah blah blah. All this stuff to kind of butter you up."
How
Just
does
like,
it
no,
make you
you
feel when
haven't.
they say we've had our eye on you for a while?
and it's the NSA.
It's the NSA. Like that's kind of like, wait a
It's
minute.
not. It's not great. But by then I was kind of but at that point I was kind of used to it because I had already known that I've been under investigation for. I was under investigation by the Secret Service at one point.
Secret Service
Um,
back then was the one that was investigating most of the computer crimes, right?
they
In the
did a lot,
90s. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, they did a lot. Yeah, I had done a thing where I had figured out how to clone pagers
Mm-hmm.
because pagers were the rage back then, and I had a pager from work that had 16 different. You could program up to 16 different things into it that it
Mm-hmm.
would frequencies that
Oh,
it would
yep. Okay.
listen to, and I had a number of them were like police and the feds
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So when at the time then President Clinton
Yes.
came to Dallas, I was able to track his movements because the Secret Service was uh, they were texting saying, okay, he's I forget what the code name was that they had for him, but
Yeah, yeah. There's
he's
always a code name. Sure.
but it was obvious that's who they're
Right.
talking about. The
And
so
so
and
you
so's.
uh, configured radio gear to get that, like ham radio style.
No, actually, I had a friend who knew the frequencies, and then he said these are the frequencies for this, and I was into pagers at the time,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and so yeah, programmed my pager to listen to these. I thought it
Oh,
was
I
cool.
see. Right, because you can. Yeah, I gotcha.
So yeah, and I thought it was so cool, and I thought I was so cool because I'm tracking the president, and one of the ones that I'd put in there that I knew on my own was it was for the local news.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and these are these alphanumeric pagers. So I was getting
Those are
this,
you were really cool, and I had one of those alphanumeric ones in the '90s, and I thought I was the cool kid.
yeah,
I mean, it turns out I was
I
just a
know.
nerd, but yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was, so I thought, oh, I'm gonna. I saw this news reporter get a thing, and I said, hey, I'm a hacker guy. I tracked the president moving
Mm-hmm.
through Dallas. Isn't that cool? Because
Right.
no president ever had a
From
problem
in
going through
Dallas,
Dallas.
right? Yeah. So that
Yeah,
red flags
so
all over the place. Yep.
yeah, and he said, "Well, how do I know you're telling the truth?" And it just says because about an hour and a half ago, you got a text from this guy and it said this, and I had his attention.
Mm-hmm.
And so then at that point, they came out and interviewed me on camera, and Secret Service didn't like that.
I bet
They
not.
didn't like that at all. No,
So then you were
no.
under investigation, but the NSA was still interested in hiring you.
Yeah, well, I've been under investigation by the FBI as well. I knew that.
Is that
Uh,
because of the Novell source code, or for other stuff that we don't want to talk
it
about?
was some of it was I'm it was probably something that I'm not quite sure, but
Mm.
it just like there was some phone freaks in the area that actually there was a group. I forget what they ended up calling them. They didn't have a name, but the media gave them a name. I can't remember the name
Oh
of it
yeah.
now. But there was one of them that was in the area, and I'm pretty sure it was him because I turns out I think I was on the same exchange
Mm-hmm.
as him phone wise, and I would get a, a PGP encrypted email through a remailer in
Mm-hmm.
Europe
Mm-hmm.
and decrypting it, and all it said was your phone is tapped. And
Oh,
then
interesting. Because they knew you. The phone freaks knew your phone was tapped.
yeah, and then they'd
Mm-hmm.
say, and 30 days later they'd say the tap's off.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm having to communicate this to my family, and it's just like
Like not over the phone.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
watch what you say over the phone. Do
Phone.
not
Yeah.
give them a reason to ever come into our house for any reason.
Right.
And so uh, so that was going on, and then I remember one time in Vegas. Okay, you know how you have those conversation. Remember those conversations you'd have around the pool at Lexus Park at DEF CON?
I did not attend the
You know?
early DEF cons, but I know what
Okay.
you speak of. Yes.
Yeah. So there's a group of us, six or seven of us standing around. We're talking, and just shooting the shit, talking about various things. And the group slowly whittled down to it's just me and one other guy,
Mm-hmm.
and we're still talking shop and everything. And I just said, I remember saying to him, I just said, God, you look really familiar to me. I said, and I'm like saying, did we talk at so and so were you at so and so
Mm-hmm.
conference? Or and he's saying no. And I said, God, I know you from somewhere. And he goes, and I knew he was FBI because
Mm-hmm.
he'd been introduced as FBI.
Right. Right. He'd
Uh,
already been spotted as a Fed.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
Mm-hmm.
he was there as
He wasn't
as an
trying to hide it.
agent,
Yeah. Sure.
and he wasn't trying to hide it. He
Yeah.
was there attending to learn stuff,
Sure.
that kind of thing. Um, I said, God, I know. And he goes, no, it was from here. And I said, here at DEF CON? And he goes, yeah, it was a year ago. I said, oh. I said, I don't remember talking to a Fed. And then there's this awkward
Awkward
silence,
silence.
he goes, yeah, I was operational then. I said, oh.
Oh, I must not have said something too bad because I'm standing here a year later talking to you still.
That's exactly what I said to him. And he said, you're right. We didn't get anything out of you. You're really good.
That's funny. Well, I don't think it. I mean, it. You are really good, Mark, and I can attest to that. And we've spoken several times in the past. Um, but also, I think your intentions were never malicious. And
Oh yeah,
it, you
yeah,
know,
that was that was supposedly I was deemed harmless
right, right,
by them because I wasn't doing anything malicious. Just like, well, shit, he's breaking into systems and he's patching them for God's
right.
sake.
You're the
You
Robin
know,
Hood of hacking.
you know, you know. So
Oh man. Um, you were arrested, almost arrested once though, for bank robbery.
yes, I was almost arrested for bank robbery. That was I just happened to drive a vehicle that was similar to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they grabbed me, took me downtown. This is when I lived in Tulsa.
Mm-hmm.
Took me downtown. You're under arrest for, bank robbery. Just like what? I don't no idea what you're talking about.
Like
Oh
what?
yeah, there's been a string of bank robberies, and just like, oh yeah, I know, it's been on the news. And they're just like interrogated me for probably 2 or 3 hours, and then they were supposedly in the process of checking out my alibi, but they were just like, really, we know you did it. We've got you on camera and all, and just all this, stuff. And
Interrogation stuff. Yeah.
yeah, just all the things they're saying. And then apparently, all of a sudden, they call the guys out, and they leave the room, and one of them comes back in like 3 minutes later and just said, "Okay, you're free to go."
Mm-hmm.
And I just like, oh, what happened? And he says, the bank robber robbed another bank. We caught him
I feel like that only happens in the
in the
movies,
act.
but that happened to you in real life, which is
Yeah, it happened to me
amazing.
in
Yeah.
real life. Yeah, yeah, I deem it to just I don't. It's not good luck. It's not bad luck. I just have luck.
Right. Yes.
I mean, because I don't know if that was good or bad.
Right.
It was an interesting. I was horrifyingly scary at the time,
I bet. I bet.
but afterward, it was such a relief. I didn't care. That they even gave me a ride back to my car, or gave me a ride back to where they got me, and I got my car back.
That's crazy, dude. Um.
Hmm.
So what were you presenting on in the early DEF cons? I have you as presenting at DEF CON 7. That wasn't your first DEF CON, right?
I don't even know what I presented then.
In 99 it says overview of activities at the NMRC.
Oh, yeah. That may have. I don't think that was the first time I presented there,
Gotcha.
but we did some. I think we did. NMRC did some panel discussions there. I did talks on. I know I did a talk. I was supposed to do a. I went out there one year and did a talk on at Black Hat on Novell NetWare,
Mm-hmm.
and I was. Oh God, I was so scared.
Yeah,
I was
Novell
so
never
scared.
sued. Novell never threatened to sue you or sue you.
Well, no, I wasn't scared over that. No,
Mm.
they. No, I had a weird. Here's a funny thing with Novell. I had a weird relationship with Novell. Um, I had what you would call a 0 day for. Uh, oh God, what was the name of that? They had a they had a phone system.
Oh,
Oh, I'm
very
trying to think of the.
vague. Yeah, they did.
I'm trying to think of the name. No, I'm not talking about
It was like
the
another division.
no, no, no. This was their corporate phone system.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I'm trying to think of. Uh, is it Meridian Mail?
Meridian was mail was a phone system. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay, they had that was it because I just remember the voice was
The
welcome
voice.
to
It was a voice. Yeah,
Meridian
Meridian was the
Mail.
voicemail that you would. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, and so they had this system hooked up, and I had a 0 day, so to speak, where I knew how to go through a key sequence that would cause you to drop to a local number, so to speak, so that the next number I dialed, it would be an out dial,
Right.
and I mainly used it for modems. Okay, but at Novell, then I could dial by extension uh, employees, and I
Mm-hmm.
remember I didn't want them to know who I was, so I called up their Meridian mail system, long distance, blue box, and because 800 numbers they track the number even though they you can dial do the
Right. Right.
star 69 to turn off the Annie
Mm-hmm.
the number being passed on to the system. 800 numbers don't do that because there's billing involved with that for the company that's running the 800 number, but it's free for the user.
Mm.
But they still capture your number. So I wasn't calling the 800 number. I was calling their direct line and then got into their voicemail system and then would drop out to use my 0 day and then call the extension of the guy that was the head of security and report bugs to him.
It would look like an internal call to his
It would look,
internal phone.
yeah,
Yeah.
he'd see on his phone. It was a 4-digit number, but he
Right.
couldn't recognize it, and he couldn't call it because the number was actually assigned to a trunk line,
Right.
and so he would be he just. I remember the first time I did it. He just like, "Where are you?" He'd had someone in another office dial that number just to see
Right.
whose voicemail it was,
Oh, you're
and
bringing
of
back
course it.
memories of like
Oh yeah,
administering
so
some phone system in one of my first
yeah.
jobs. Like it was because when you were the IT guy at a small company, you did everything, and one of them was
Oh yeah,
administering
you
a
did
phone
everything.
system, which I feel like not a lot of people have their own phone system these days either. Like, why?
Exactly. But yeah, so yeah, that was how I contacted them. Where were we talking about? Where did we get on
Where
the?
were we going? We were talking about your talks at DEF CON, but then there's the.
Oh,
But my favorite talk of yours, perhaps one of my favorite talks of all time, is hacking the friendly skies, and
mm,
it was 2006, I believe, because 2007 I wrote the book on WT54G routers, so like I was really into wireless stuff in 2006,
hmm.
and
That was a good book, by the way.
oh, thank you. And you've
You're
always
welcome.
supported me and our work here at Security Weekly, Mark, as well, and I just wanted to thank you for that. You really have been
All right, no problem.
like Mark, you've done amazing. Like, why does he even listen to our show? I don't get it. You've always supported us.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I remember being in the audience. I was so excited. Like, I read the program, I'm like, SimpleNomad's going to talk about this really cool like Wi-Fi 0 day. Like this is going to be exciting. I even think I heard from some of my friends, like it kind of leaked out in our small circle of friends, like what it was going to be about. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I had actually gone through and I sent the premise around to a few people. I would do
Yeah.
that. I would say if I had something interesting that was new, because I was always nervous. I wanted to make sure I had every technical question I could conceivably think
Right.
of that would be asked by the audience.
Yeah.
I already have a detailed answer for that I could give a quick answer for, and if they pushed me, I
Pushed.
could
Yep.
give a detailed answer.
Right.
So yeah, so a few people knew about it before I was giving the talk.
It was like ad hoc networking, right?
Ad hoc networking, yeah, just like just the idea of that if you if for some reason I don't even know how the bug worked, but when you think about it, but
Mm.
basically what it was, I to sum it up quickly, I went to the airport. They This is before free Wi-Fi was a popular thing.
Right.
And I fire up my laptop because a few airports had Wi-Fi that
Mm-hmm.
you could connect up to the internet. And I'm, between flights and I'm waiting, I'm bored, it's a flight delay, all this. And I see all these things listed there as, you know, there were ad hoc networks, but they were named things like Wi-Fi or Netgear,
Mm-hmm.
uh, D-Link, and these were popular routers at the time, and I knew that those were the default names when you set one up.
Right.
I think, how did these come about? And you could start connecting to them, and they're people's laptops, and it's just like there isn't a trend of this going on.
Right. We should pause for the audience too, because ad hoc networking, I don't even think exists today. Right. That was like to network two Windows computers together wirelessly was the intended purpose.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah, and so yeah, so as opposed to having an actual Wi-Fi network where you have to, like, say, put in a username and a
Right. Right.
password, or put in a password for it, and then you do your thing. But yeah, so uh, and it was something that you could do, yeah, just to temporarily set something up. So someone at some point had set up an ad hoc network called Netware, or
Or Netgear.
sorry,
Yep.
Netgear, and then someone else, when they opened up their laptop, saw, because it's just like I'm used to connecting up to things with a specific Wi-Fi name. Oh, there's Netgear. I'll connect to it, even though it was ad hoc, and it would automatically connect to it.
Right.
And that's the other thing. I was finding clusters of these mini networks that were occurring at the airport. And then it's just like, why are these connecting up? And I realized I was onto something. And after some exploration, what it was like, if you connected up to a ad hoc network that you were used to connecting up to before by name,
Mm-hmm.
it would stick. And therefore, the next time you booted up your laptop, if it couldn't find a network, it would start advertising that ad hoc network that you
Mm-hmm.
connected up to last. And then it would spread to the next Windows users. And it was only happen with Windows. And it actually was, if there was a certain type of uh, Wi-Fi card that you could buy, it was immune to it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're using something that used Microsoft's drivers, then the bug, so to speak, worked. And so that was the thing. And so then I figured out, well, these people could obviously open up their laptops and on the plane and not realize that they're advertising.
An open wireless network. You could just connect
I
to it,
know
and you'd be connected
I
on the
could
same
just
network as that person's laptop on the plane.
exactly. And so therefore, I'm connected. And if depending on how they had the laptop configured, they might be wide open,
They might have
which
shares accessible. And we might have pictures of your vacation. Speaking hypothetically, of course, about testing this particular bug on the way home from that particular schmoocon.
yeah. Yeah, and that was the thing. And so I know that the when I was running the talk through other people, I did run it by Jennifer Granick,
Mm-hmm.
the attorney. She
Yes.
was known as the hacker
The
attorney
hacker
back then.
attorney. Yep.
Yeah, and so I ran it by her just to get her opinion on. Says I'm giving this talk, and she just said you could end up on a list. You know, don't talk about the data you collected on planes because I collected data saying, okay, here's how many vulnerable systems I found on a typical flight.
Right. Right.
And
And but she told you
because
not to share that.
she told me not to share that. She said that's because you're committing a felony. You
Right.
can't talk about that.
And you're like, it
And
wouldn't be the first time. Like, whatever.
I just said, nah, it already happened. There's no logs.
Prove it. And so you
Yeah,
put it in your
prove it.
talk. You talked about it anyway.
Yeah, so I talked about it anyway. Yeah, and so yeah, and so uh, they didn't print the details of the talk in the conference thing,
Right. Right.
but they did in the. Uh, but then I talked about it, and on the way back, I was afraid that I might end up on a list, and
Not be
I'd
able to
be
fly.
pulled, not be able to fly. TSA would grab me and say, the FAA says you're unsafe.
Now, did you disclose this to Microsoft first?
Yeah, yes, I disclosed it to Microsoft, and they had said they were going to patch,
Mm-hmm.
and because it was, and I said in the talk, this is a lame 0 day.
You did, and I remember thinking, no, this is really cool. This isn't lame.
No, but I mean, because the mitigation was we'll turn off
Turn off
wireless
Wi-Fi.
when you're not, yeah, turn it off when you're not using it, and then
Right.
there's full mitigation right there,
Mm-hmm.
and and so that was, but it came out in the next service pack. But yeah, there was a Microsoft guy that was there,
Mm.
and I remember and joking with him because I remember getting drunk the night before, and he was at the bar, and he said, "I dare you to wear this T-shirt for your talk." And so I went ahead and said, "Sure, I'll do that. I don't care." And so I gave the talk wearing a T-shirt that said Internet Explorer, their browser,
Yes.
with their browser's logo on it. So I wore that in my talk.
There's still there's video of that somewhere on the internet still.
There is, yeah, I've got it on my YouTube channel. I've got it on, I've got it on there.
One of my
So
favorite talks, man. I thought it was awesome.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, because that was the other thing too. I had probably about a decent 15 minutes of content,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had to fill the rest of the time with comedy and just all kinds of stuff. So there's a lot of jokes and everything in there where I
It's awesome.
talk about scenarios that one could do conceivably with accessing someone else's laptop,
Right.
playing odd noises through their speakers while they
Speakers,
go up to the bathroom.
yeah.
Just just stupid shit. So it was a lot of fun though.
Mark, what are your takes on the when we talked about discovering vulnerabilities and creating exploits? What is your take on the exploit markets today and the evolution of that? I mean, we've established, right, that back in the day we'd find stuff for fun, we'd share it with our friends, maybe
Hmm.
we'd tell the vendor, maybe we wouldn't. I think that quickly moved to we'll tell the vendor, about it,
Yeah.
kind of thing. But now there's whole markets selling vulnerabilities, exploits, 0 days, and what have you. What are your takes on that?
Um, I wasn't a fan of it early on, and oh gosh, I still can't remember I should look them up. The name of the company that started this.
Yeah, the tipping point bought, and then
Yeah,
HP bought
Tipping
tipping
Point.
point or something like that,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
Tipping Point bought them, but there was a company that started it, and they said, you know, we'll buy your 0 day. Here's our price scheme, roughly, and then they would create an entry in their intrusion detection system to
Mm.
detect the vulnerability,
Right.
and they'd handle dealing with the vendor, and then you get credit, you know,
Because
and
credit's, I mean, it is a big deal. We don't downplay credit either.
yeah, if you wanted credit,
Right.
maybe
Maybe you
you
didn't.
didn't want credit,
But the thing was,
but
paying customers would get that in their intrusion detection systems first while they were doing
yeah,
the whole disclosure thing.
right. So they would have the fix for it in or the detection for
Right.
whatever the thing was uh, before the thing was even patched. And so that was, I mean, sure, it's clever, but I just thought it was a horrid idea because I thought this is going to turn into something where the prices are going to increase. You're going to have people that are going to start saying, I want exclusive access to this vulnerability that aren't going to patch it. And so people will be, uh, they will not be secure
Mm-hmm.
uh, out there because all of a sudden the vendor is notified, you know, and it led to basically bug brokers uh,
Mm-hmm.
spawned up as a result of this.
Also, I
And
mean,
the
the
vulnerability,
the detect was released to customers, and if you knew someone was a customer, you could get the detect and work your way back from there. Not with every vulnerability, right? But
no, not
for
with every one of them, but yeah, you get some, just, it would have some weird description.
yeah.
And then then you'd look at what the thing was detecting.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you could figure this stuff out. So
Mm-hmm.
it, but yeah, it was just, there were companies that ended up like buying this stuff and then not making it public, which was something I had predicted then, said, I'm sure this is going to happen because then it's more valuable to them. Uh,
Right.
and they could use that as a part of their, you know, like, oh, we do pen testing services for, or we do, you know, nefarious computer things for you, you know, Mr. Nation State.
Right.
And so I just thought this is terrible. This is going to ruin everything.
You were like, hacking team is going to exist before it exists. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
exactly. And then yeah, Hacking Team was the perfect example of
Mm-hmm.
that was the perfect culmination of this. Is that they were looking for, researching, and purchasing these things,
Mm-hmm.
keeping them secret, and then using them uh, to do, in many cases, bad things.
I think it's the for me, Mark, it's the keeping it secret piece that makes it dangerous. Because
Yeah.
when I was talking with like Casey Ellis, right, about bug bounties, he's like, we try and get people to fix them as soon as possible because it limits your exposure window. Like the longer you try and keep it a secret, the more bad things that can happen with it. And like
Hmm.
once a patch is out there, like you mitigate a ton of, maybe not all the risk, but a bunch of risk. People still have to apply the patch, right? But like once it's
Right.
public, once there's a patch, you start the danger level. I wouldn't say the risk level, but the danger level starts to go down. When you start keeping things secret, it's not, you and I both know, and many of us listening, it's not really secret either. I think we already established that, right? Like some people know about it, and that can be dangerous.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just yeah. If there's something juicy, people will talk. Yeah. Like how you knew roughly what my talk was, that my some
Yeah,
of the content of my talk before it happened,
right.
just
There was a
because yeah,
buzz, and like we'd share things, and we're like, "Oh, look, my friend Bob got into someone's laptop on the airplane." you know.
yeah, oh, good times. But
Yeah.
yeah, that was I still. I mean, it probably would have happened eventually anyway. But I mean, just the fact now that you could, you know, if you're good at bug hunting, you could find and sell a bug, one bug a year, and
And make a,
that's your job.
and that's your job, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, but there's morals and ethics surrounding who you sell that to, potentially.
Yeah.
Like,
Potentially.
would you sell to a nation state, the U.S. or otherwise, and not know what they're going to do with it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the hard question. Some of the people, and that's the thing. I knew some people that were doing some people that are very good friends of mine that uh, were doing the bug bounty, the bug broker thing,
Mm.
and they were making tons of money. And they said, my best customer is the U.S. government,
Right.
and they refuse to sell to any, like say, some of them, they say, well, I'm not going to sell to anyone that's not U.S. Okay, well, that's noble. I appreciate that.
Mm.
That's to a degree, but then again, it's just like, well, I don't, I mean, one guess who was buying the things, you know,
Mm-hmm.
which which three-letter agency was buying them and spending, you know, high five, low six-figure amounts for bugs,
Right. And you have your
and
morals like, oh, I'm going to sell to the U.S. and then you have Eternal Blue. Like, what? What is the possibility that they bought that from someone and then it gets out there and causes damage?
yeah. Now, I mean, I know that in some cases, and I've just heard this through back channels, that you've had things that were sold to the government, and then later on, those things were reported by the government to say Microsoft or
Right.
Apple or whoever. And okay, that's fine, but what about that time in between
Yes.
where they used? Uh, if it were me running that kind of a place, I would say, of course we used it because we had it.
Why? I mean, why wouldn't you? You wouldn't just
Why
sit
wouldn't
on
you?
it, right? If you're not disclosing it right away, we can assume that they're probably using it for something.
Yeah, and I doubt they were doing it saying, "Oh, let's come up with mitigations now." I'm
Right.
going to spend a I'm going to spend 100K on a bug so I can design mitigations before I report them to the
Yeah. Yeah.
report it to the vendor. No,
Right.
that's not going to happen. And the prices are even higher now. They're
Yeah.
just
I mean, you can get $1 million for an
yeah,
O-Day exploit in Windows, for example, right? I think that's one of the going rates.
yeah. So yeah, it's just insane, crazy money.
And it's hard for the bug bounty programs to keep up with that. Whether you're going through a company
Yeah.
or it's your own bug bounty program. How do you? I mean, a lot of the bug bounty programs are paying out higher for certain levels of exploits, but still, it's tough to compete
Well,
with the.
see, the thing is like if it had evolved in a more controlled way, of course, hindsight being 2020,
Yeah.
the way bug bounty programs are now, I don't have a problem with those. It was just these bug brokers that were
Brokers.
selling, that were, and not all of them. I didn't have a problem with all of them. It's
Mm-hmm.
just that there were some of them who just say, I'm only going to sell to, you know, repressive, bad governments that are
Mm-hmm.
going to use it to spy on their people. Um, that kind of thing, bothered me. But the bug bounty programs that are out there now, I actually think they're very useful, and I I applaud their effort. I think we could probably, I would love to be able to say we don't need to hire a an external accounting firm and pay them six figures a year to say that our security's decent.
Mm-hmm.
Just have a really good bug bounty program and just say, here's our proof, you
Right.
know? And to me, that would be much more effective. Plus, you're getting things fixed.
Yeah.
So,
As long as the incentives are right and you're not solely relying on the bug bounty program, like it still means you have to implement security in your organization. It doesn't absolve
that's
you of
true.
that.
Yeah, well, that's true. Well, the whole idea behind the bug bounty program, if you're going to be paying somebody some money, you better have it fixed before it goes public or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
I
Yeah.
do agree with the whole, I guess it was, what's the standard now? 90 days disclosure. It's been kind of roughly if
It's
you
been
report a
roughly
bug.
this roughly the standard, although as you and I have observed over the years, there's always variances on that, and not every company. I mean, we look at Apple and their relationship with security researchers, and it's a rough one. And I don't know.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and that's the thing. I know people there that work there,
Mm,
and uh, they would like to change some of that too. But I mean, it's just you know, just encourage them to keep fighting the good fight, and hopefully things will improve. Yeah, I don't know. I just that whole element though, it just
yeah, I think
there's
it's
this
embedded in Apple's culture, right? It's hard to change that culture. I've talked with folks like Patrick Wardle, right? And he's like, some of it's just the way Apple wants to be perceived and part of their culture, right? That's super, like you said, we know people that work at Apple and are fighting a good fight, but it's an uphill battle in a lot of those
Yeah.
culture kind of things with Apple.
Yeah.
People have a different meaning in interpretation of the term security researcher, Mark. How do you define? It takes on, I think, different meanings in different contexts. How do you define security researcher?
Um, well, the thing is, it's just like part of it is, if there's some security task and you may have this, huge security department with multiple sub departments
Mm-hmm.
and everything. And, but you have this odd problem that comes up that doesn't quite fit into a group and it's something that needs to be solved. And they have no idea where the solution is going to come from or how it's going to take shape or anything. A lot of times that's what a researcher ends up doing is they're going through and just saying, okay, well, I'm going to explore every aspect of whatever this problem is, chew on it, and see how it can be applied to the company I work for and do this. That's one way of looking at what a security researcher is and does. Another way is the one that's probably most well known is, of course, like say uh, the I, the best example right now is probably Google's Project Zero. So the Project Zero model of we have researchers, they go out and find bugs in software. And they find these bugs in software, they report them, they get the vendor to patch them, and then they publish a, whatever blog post and talk about it after, the disclosure of 90 days or whatever. Um, and there's that aspect of it. And the idea behind that from a company perspective is that it's one, good for the community, so it makes the company look good
Right.
that's doing it. Um, Two, it makes the company look like a thought leader in security because it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
look at all the smart security people we have working here. Please, buy our products and hire us to do whatever we do and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's almost.
Uh,
I mean, we call that earning permission, right? To have the conversation to buy the
mhm.
product, right?
Yeah, and then there are some companies that it's like kind of it's a they need to have that uh, edge when it comes to doing pen testing, for
Yes.
example.
Yes.
Where they've got to, okay, we've got to come up with, you know, it's one thing to say, oh, here's this new vulnerability that came out, but it's all we know about it was that someone reported this to Microsoft and now there's a patch.
Mm.
I'm going to reverse engineer the patch, figure out what it is, combine that with the description of what they've claimed that to be, and I'm going to come up with exploit code and I'm going to come up with possibly even pseudo weaponized exploit code.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's still security research. That's where you're researching how to do that kind of thing. And I've done all of those. Um, the ones I probably enjoy the most is when it's just like you're just handed a problem and they just say, well, look, we don't have no idea how to solve this. We don't even know where to begin. And just like to me, it's like just like this open slate, just like, oh, good, I get to try anything and
Try
everything.
stuff. Yeah. Be the mad scientist,
Try
the
stuff.
mad security scientist.
Yeah, and that's always a lot of fun. I mean, because early on, my first job when where my title was security researcher, that was a lot of times it was doing the research. It was that whole thing, bring attention to the
Mm-hmm.
company and all that. But also, as another part of our job was since we had a scanner, a security scanner,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we would have to we wouldn't have to write the exploits in the finished product. We were just supposed to say, okay, here's some working code that demonstrates what it is that you should be checking for in the scanner.
Oh yeah, I
And
know that game very well. Don't it's kind of like exploiting it, but not. It's proof that it exists without exploitation. It's an interesting middle ground.
yeah, and so I did that for a long time, and later on, I got into the reverse engineering Microsoft patches, which was fun.
Mm-hmm.
That was and that was the thing. That's how that whole hacking the friendly skies thing came about, was because I've been working on I think two or three of those, and I got bored. I just said, I am sick of looking at IDA Pro.
Mm.
I am going to do something different today,
Mm-hmm.
and I think I've been doing it at the hotel room, and
Mm-hmm.
then flying back, I thought, I'm not going to pull up IDA Pro on the plane. I'm not going to pull up IDA Pro on the plane, and so I just got out and said, okay, what's going on Wi-Fi, here at the terminal, and that's what started the whole thing.
Right.
So I don't know. It's just weird. I know there's certain people that prefer certain things out of researcher, but I mean, that encompasses that encompasses a lot.
Sure, but I,
It really
I
does.
think we all largely agree that you have to prove that the vulnerability exists, and fully
Hmm.
weaponizing an exploit definitely gets people's attention and gets, I think, to patch much quicker. Right.
Yeah, I can think of times, and I will not mention names, but I know that there have been times, particularly in the late '90s, early 2000s, when I had a vendor that wasn't doing their part to patch quick enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so someone will say, I know how to get them to patch it.
Put it in
And
Metasploit.
not, no, not even, it was worse. This was, people would say, let's weaponize it and wormify it and release it on the internet.
Right. Right.
And all the payload was to infect something else
Mm-hmm.
and let the thing run. And that's how some of this stuff, would get patched.
It's crazy. I mean, I feel like open source projects are much better across the
Hmm.
board. Is my general kind. I don't have any
Yeah.
like hard research to back that up. Right. When you described that worm, I kind of thought of like the lion worm, right, which had was like a worm to fix a worm kind of thing. If you remember that whole
Hmm.
thing, and that was
Yeah.
open source, right? I feel like open source. When I talk to security researchers, right, that are creating exploits, the open source projects, like, oh, well, you're gonna get this stuff fixed. It's commercial companies that, you get the mixed bag still today.
Yeah. Yeah, you still do. Crazy, crazy
Is that
stuff.
is that just a constant? You think?
Uh, yeah, I think so. I was thinking that during the whole era when it was funny, because I remember the thing that really got me pumped about doing the whole reverse engineering of, like, say, Microsoft patches in the early 2000s was a coworker did it
Mm-hmm.
and said, I found the pattern that basically identifies this, because we were looking for a pattern so you could say, okay, because the scanner had two components. It had the one that was uh, credentialed and non-credentialed.
Right. Where did you work at that time?
That was at BindView, who later
Oh,
got bought,
right. And bind
by
by.
Symantec. They got, yeah,
Okay. Okay. I remember BindView now. There was a lot of vulnerability research coming out of BindView. I remember checking that back in the day.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Well, I was involved with some of it, yeah. So, but yeah, there was just very prolific, and I remember someone said, I found a pattern to where you could spot this in a binary. This is what you're looking at. And they said, I went ahead and searched some other Microsoft code
Right. Right.
and found out that not only is the bug here, it's in five other places
Mm-hmm.
and two other, executables or DLLs or whatever. And they silently patched them.
And I'd love to say Microsoft like learned how to do that much better, but then you look at the whole Exchange exploit that came out, and or Print Spooler. It was Print Spooler, right? That just was like this
Hmm.
kind of like little cycle that went on and on in that same vein,
Yeah,
Mark.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. But yeah, so I was hoping that just with the whole, and people were writing uh, blog posts about it, like, they patched it here, but I found the bug,
Mm-hmm.
the exact same type of bug in another part of their code that they didn't patch,
Right.
and then they would put that out. I mean, that was some interesting things. I thought, okay, this will hopefully stop the silent patching and
Right.
hopefully make closed sourced a little better.
Yeah, it did, but still, company. I mean, Apple's
Yeah.
guilty of doing that too. And there's some of the recent articles that I've read that Apple still silently patches a ton of stuff, which is I don't particularly like the silent patching. Like, how does that help me prioritize it if I don't know that it's that's an exploitable bug that I'm fixing or not? I mean, that basically means if you're not telling me, I got to patch everything, and we both know that's not gonna happen.
Well, and the thing is, it's just like if you say, well, there's this one function of the component that's got the bug, and here's the mitigation. You're thinking, I got to apply the mitigation now until I can plan the patch because I've got to
Mm-hmm.
patch a whole farm full of servers, or whatever, or a farm full of workstations or something. Uh, but what if that mitigation only takes care of that one instance, and then the other five that they patch silently, that you can still exploit those?
Mm-hmm.
The mitigation doesn't take care of those. To me, that was the worst. Just absolutely the worst.
Well, that's
Oh well,
we
job
still have
security.
problems, right? On a
Yeah.
lighter note,
Yeah, with all of us in the security industry are going to be gainfully employed for forever.
for a long
So,
time, I guess.
yeah.
Um, what's your favorite hacker movie, Mark?
Oh, I really like sneakers.
Sneaker song.
I
So I'm
Yeah,
in the
I
hackers
really like.
camp. I'm in the hackers camp
Oh, I absolutely hated that movie.
because of the way it depicted the hacking, right? Largely, or it was
uh,
other
uh,
analysis.
well, I mean, okay, just as far as a quality movie goes, all right, it wasn't as good as Sneakers. Okay, I mean, Sneakers had much better acting.
Agreed. Agreed. I
Okay,
had better
so
quality actors, I would say, than Ben Kingsley, Robert Redford, Sidney
yeah, oh yeah,
Poitier.
yeah,
Yeah, it had some big name actors. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, very very skilled people in there. So just as a general movie, it was better. But the thing that this is probably why I hate it is that it came out, and then there was this influx onto Usenet and mailing lists and all this other kind of stuff of all these wannabes just saying, "Teach me how to hack."
Right. Isn't that a
I,
good?
I,
But isn't that a good thing though, Mark?
it is to a degree,
Mm.
as until you start saying, "Okay, here's what you need to do," and they're just like, "I don't want to learn some weird technical thing."
Right. I just want to hack the Gibson, man.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, stuff like that.
Right.
That would just
Because that was
that just
1995 when that came out, and I could. It's an interesting aspect of the kind of gating that we still do, right? That I likened in one of my talks to kung fu movies, right? Why the kung fu master is always reluctant to teach new students because they had a student that they taught and essentially turned to the dark side, right? To mix kung fu and Star Wars in one kind of analogy, right?
yeah,
But I think
yeah.
that's what you're saying is there was this influx of students that you didn't quite know what their intentions were, and a lot of times you could tell their intentions were not good. Like, oh, I want to hack a
No,
bank,
they would.
and I want to terrorize a law enforcement officer, just like I saw in Hackers. You're like, dude, no, that's not what we do.
Yeah, or just things just like my girlfriend broke up with me. I want to
Yeah,
break into her email.
yeah,
Just like,
yeah.
no,
No,
that's no. You need to learn some life skills and figure out how to not be an asshole so that your girlfriend won't break up with you. That's what you need to do.
correct, correct.
So,
With great
but
power
it's kind
comes
of hard
great
to
responsibility.
yeah, but it's kind of hard to explain that
Mm-hmm.
in Usenet. And
Right.
just and the thing also the thing is just another kind of point of perspective. this wasn't too long after you had what's referred to as Eternal September, but it was known as the September that never ended.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you had this influx of people onto, like, say, Usenet that weren't used to Netiquette.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it always happened every September when you had the new influx of people that all of a sudden they're at a university,
Yep.
they're freshmen, they have access to computers, and now they can get onto the internet for the
Right.
first time.
Because in
And they're
'95, not many people had internet in their homes.
correct. And so this way they say, ah, now I can get onto Usenet and I can,
Right.
go about and do things. And so there was this thing about, but see, then, just I think it was like 93 is when this
Mm-hmm.
occurred, uh, started happening early 94. It's just like you had the big providers like Delphi.
AOL was just
AOL
coming
was
up, right? Yeah, it was. Yeah.
yeah, AOL did it too, that very soon after that as well. And so you had this huge influx of newbies that came in and just didn't pay attention to any kind of form of netiquette
Mm-hmm.
whatsoever, and it pissed off a lot of people. Spam started appearing
Yep.
in stuff at that time, and just like, oh my god! And it's not like Usenet was this wonderful, pristine place. I
Sir,
mean,
I would never
it
describe
was
it
a
as a wonderful, pristine place.
it was a cesspool. But
Yes.
the thing is, it's just like it was a somewhat orderly cesspool,
Right. Right.
and then and now it's just so it was just like this horrid thing to deal with, and just so you have that, and then just a year or so later, all these people come in and they're just like, teach me how to hack.
Mm.
I want to break into my school and change my grades. It's just like that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
dumb reason to
Don't do. Don't do that.
and then even then just saying, okay, look, here's what you need to do. This was kind of part of the inspiration for the hack fac,
Mm-hmm.
was just uh, come up, here's a list of things you need to know, and then they were technical enough that a lot of people just said, I don't want to do this.
Mm.
Well, fine, go do something else. Go take up skateboarding. Go take up drinking. Pick another hobby.
How do you encourage people today to get into cybersecurity, Mark?
Um, I don't know. I wish I could come up with, if I had that figured out, then I would just create a firm that
That does that,
was
right?
that does that.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just, if you're curious and you're about technology, and you have kind of a knack for technology, maybe there's different areas that you can get into that aren't even necessarily technical but are needed,
Mm.
dealing with security. I don't know. It just, if the topic is interesting, pursue it. That's just all I could say. And you don't. It helps if you have a if you get one of those goofy 5-letter certificate things or whatever, but you don't need those certificates,
No,
really.
but I,
I
I
mean,
think you're right, Mark. It
it does
helps
help.
early on in your. I've always said it helps early on in your career when you're getting into it to go through the certification process, pick one or whatever. Like it helps get your feet
It,
wet, and yeah.
that's the main thing. It helps get your feet wet.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's not free.
Right.
That's the bad thing. That's a limiting factor. So now all of a sudden, we just excluded the poor, who may be sharp, okay,
Right. And
and they
there
may
is a
just
lot
say,
of
I can't.
there's a lot of free training, but you're right. It's not going to get you a certification that's recognized necessarily, and it's very targeted. It's not complete, right? You can go get some free
Yeah,
training on very nichey topics for sure, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I probably shouldn't say this, but lie. Say, oh yeah, I got that certificate.
No, we're not encouraging lying, Mark.
Oh, we're not. Oh, okay. But I mean, to me, the thing is, the main thing for the certification stuff is that uh, it's a form of training. it gets you to understand some of the jargon and the
Right.
lingo.
Which you,
Now,
I see what you're
quick.
saying. Like, you might have that, but not have the certificate necessarily because you can't afford to go pay it. But you learn all that stuff on your own. You shouldn't be
Hmm.
discounted from that job because of that.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. That's something at least I tell recruiters and stuff
Yes,
at wherever I'm employed. It's just like, look, if they don't have those letters after their name, it's still okay.
it's still. I know. I encourage that too. I feel like we've got a lot more evangelizing to do on that with HR and
Yeah.
recruiting teams for sure. It's frustrating.
Hmm.
Well, are
Cool,
you?
cool.
Did you go to ShmooCon? Are you attending any events coming up?
Um, I'm debating Vegas this year. I
Mm.
because the last conference that I attended in person was ShmooCon 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and that was right as it was happening in
Yep.
China. The pandemic was happening
Yep.
there.
Yeah, I did RSA beginning of 2020.
I was at that point. I had done a little bit of research on what was going on with
Mm-hmm.
the pandemic already, and so I didn't wear a mask at ShmooCon. No one
No
was
one was.
then
Yeah.
because
RSA is a
it
few people,
wasn't
but
it
yeah.
wasn't there.
Right.
But I did. I was the only person that wore it on the plane on the way there and back because I figured,
Mm-hmm.
well, the airport's going to be the place where I catch it.
Right.
And it really, I mean, if you look back over the history of people in airports and stuff, it wasn't unusual to see someone
With a
wearing a
mask.
mask
Right.
in an airport.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, since I've gone 2 years without a cold, and
Right.
all my 2 or 3 years without a cold, and I got cold medicine expiring
Yeah.
that has gone unused, I'm probably going to mask up for the rest of my life because it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, this is just, and the whole idea of thwarting facial recognition is also very
Right. There's
appealing.
that
But
too.
yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I may be in Vegas this year. I haven't made up my mind yet. Probably if my talk for Black Hat gets accepted, then I'll
Sure.
probably go ahead and go
Well,
and
I hope
not do
so,
it
and I hope I'm out
virtually.
there too, and we can hang out in person again.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Be
That'd be
awesome.
cool. We could share a beer with straws under our masks.
That's right. Whatever it takes. Well, Mark,
Whatever it takes, man.
that's right. It was nice catching up with you. Thank you for appearing on Hacker Heroes.
Oh, thank you. It was a lot of fun.